Hi guys, and welcome back to another IBRACORP video. Thanks for joining us today. Just a quick shout out to my subscribers. Thank you very much for subscribing. I really appreciate it. We've been getting a lot of interest over the past few weeks, which is fantastic. I'm really happy to hear that my videos are helping you out. If you haven't subscribed already, please think about subscribing. It really helps me out. So today we're going to be looking at setting up Cloudflare for your home lab server. I've had quite a few people actually mention they would like to see a video on this, and being a security sort of topic, it's really important to understand the risks involved when putting something out into the World Wide Web and how you can mitigate some of those risks. So today we'll be looking at Cloudflare. Now, Cloudflare at its very core is a DDoS protection and attack mitigation system, and Cloudflare is designed to be sort of like a middleman between you and the world, or your server and the rest of the world. And it helps mitigate DDoS attacks by diverting attacks out into their own servers instead of at your origin server, and spreading the load across multiple servers across the world. So the best thing about Cloudflare is that it's free. They offer a free plan, and as you can see here, it gives you DDoS attack mitigation and a global content delivery network straight out of the box without a single cent. Now today we're going to be looking at installing, setting up, and configuring Cloudflare for our home server, as well as putting it into NGINX Proxy Manager. That's correct, it's called NGINX Proxy Manager. I was mispronouncing it in earlier videos, so I've been corrected on that. And we're going to also talk about a full chain security instead of just edge security, and I'll explain all that as we go along. So without further ado, let's just get stuck into it. I'm going to start from absolute scratch here, guys. We're going to be creating a Cloudflare account. We're going to be purchasing a domain and setting it all up as if you are completely brand new to this. So if you have not seen my NGINX proxy videos, that's out there too. I highly suggest you watch that after this one or before. And if you've already accomplished some of the steps here, please just use the time chapters below to skip to the part that's relevant for you. So as you can see on the free plan, we've got the DDoS attack mitigation and global content delivery network. There's other features here that you can get on the paid plans, which is the Pro, Business, and Enterprise. And I mean, look, there's some interesting things here, don't get me wrong, that you might benefit from if you want to use those features, but we're not going to really worry about them today. I have been using Cloudflare for years now, and I've been perfectly happy with the free plan. I have contemplated getting a pro plan, but I still just haven't had the need for it just yet. So you have a think about what suits you most and come back when you're ready. Okay, but as for us, we're going to set this up from scratch. So why use Cloudflare? Well, I've created a little diagram here to help us understand the whole process of it all. So I'm making this in Draw.io, which is another free and open source program replacing something like Microsoft Visio. So I highly recommend checking it out. It's pretty neat. So what we've got here is what it looks like for a no certificate setup. Okay, one of the biggest no-nos of setting up a website or a web server is having no sort of security or certificate applied to the site. So as you can see, here's little Johnny over here. I don't even know if that's his name, but we're just going to call him that just in case there's some sort of copyright. This is little Johnny over here. Now Johnny hits my website, ibracorp.com.au, which we're going to purchase shortly. And he's communicating with our web server right here. This is our web server, or in our case, an Unraid server. It could be any sort of web server you're running. As you can see, our IP address, which I've just made up, is sending the information across and over to the web browser. At the same time, it's displaying our IP address, and it's an unsecure, unencrypted connection. Everything is open and can be read from anyone that wants to snoop. Obviously that's not ideal. Okay, little Johnny's still getting his content here, but unfortunately we're at risk. Anything in between this connection can be intercepted and attacked, which is not safe. It doesn't take much to get an IP address, and the next thing you know, someone can take your entire server down, and at the very worst, take everything on the server out. Not what we want. So the second scenario where Cloudflare comes in, little Johnny looks up the website. The website actually communicates and is sent from Cloudflare. Cloudflare has multiple servers across the world, as you can see here. These are just some example ones I've written in. And yeah, look, that looks good. SSL certificate is provided out. End user sees it as a secure connection. That looks good for us as a business. And any sort of DDoS attack would be distributed among their CDN network and mitigated away from our server. This is what we call an edge certificate setup, okay? So if you were to imagine a horizontal line right through here, this is the edge, okay? From Cloudflare to the client. No worries, that's encrypted, fantastic, awesome. However, our origin server, which I'll be referring to, is sending traffic to Cloudflare, and it's still unsecure and still displaying our original IP address. Okay? So, you know, if you're just an average user, you're not going to notice any difference. It's all going to be secure and you're going to get the SSL certificate. But what you'll notice is that it's getting Cloudflare's IP address rather than our origin IP address. But unfortunately, that won't stop someone that's a bit more advanced or someone that wants to cause a bit of harm. They can still eventually find the origin IP address right here or intercept it from the origin to Cloudflare. So this path is still exposed and still at risk. And a lot of people don't really cover that. You know, when you're using a certificate from home, you might be using your Let's Encrypt certificate, Swag, NGINX, whatever it might be. This connection is still unsecure. I just want to reiterate that. So we need to think about how we can make this also secure as well. So what Cloudflare lets you do, and is part of its free plan, is actually have a origin certificate as well. So we'll switch to our final image. Little Johnny here, pretty happy. Now you'll notice that an origin certificate gives us a certificate that lives on the server and is provided by Cloudflare and is encrypted. It's got a special cipher encryption on it that only Cloudflare knows how to decrypt. So from here to here, we've now secured that link. Then from Cloudflare out, we've still got the original edge certificate that we set up. So this is a full chain certificate here where end-to-end is encrypted and is secure. And that's ideally where you want to be at when you're setting up these things. You know, I think my first sort of realization was for quite a while, I didn't have Cloudflare set up, and you know, anyone can really basically see my IP address. I mean, that's not very safe. So that's just a brief explanation on all that. So now we kind of want to get stuck into it, okay? So we'll just minimize this. So we want to get stuck into it. Okay, so first things first, let's start right from the beginning. You haven't got a domain yet, okay? If you do have a domain, please just use the timestamps below, skip to the next step. But we're going to say we don't have a domain yet. So I use Google Domains. You might be using GoDaddy. You might be using any other sort of service that allows you to purchase a domain. So I'm using Google Domains. I find it quite easy to use. Okay, so we've looked up a domain that we want to purchase, and I'm quite happy with this ending for .org. So we've got it in our basket. That looks really cool. We've got our privacy switched on, and we've got auto renew switched on, so that's perfectly fine. We don't want to use a custom email. There is ways around this, which I will do a video in future, so that you can use a Gmail account and have your organization ending there. But if you wanted to have a little bit more control, you know, if you want the workspace, go for it. I'm not going to bother with that today. Okay, so we've just paid for our new domain and we're just waiting for it to register. And there we go. So we have our new domain, it's set up, and we're ready to go to the next step. Okay, not that hard to purchase a domain, as you can see. If you just have a brief look through some of the settings there, you'll see that it's not connected to anything yet and it's completely from scratch. Okay, but the domain's been purchased. So let's go up to overview and we'll leave that there and we'll come back to Cloudflare. So we're back to Cloudflare, we've created an account, and the next step after putting in an email and password is it asks you for the site. So we've just put in the site, the domain that we've just purchased, and click add site. It's going to ask you to select a plan. We're quite happy with the free plan, so we want to click on free and click continue. So what it's going to do now is just have a look for any existing DNS records. If you just come back to Google Domains, we go to DNS. So as you can see with name servers, we're using the Google domain name servers at the moment. That's because that's what it starts with. And if we just scroll down a little bit, there's no other records in here because we haven't really set anything up. So we can just ignore all of that. And welcome to the next step. So the next step now asks for you to enter DNS records. Okay. The DNS records are basically going to be the rules that tell it where to send traffic and where the IP address of the server is. So the very first thing that you want to set up is an A record that will point to your IP address. And this will be the IP address that your server is available on. So we'll put www and we will put the IP address of our server in. Okay, so we've put the two following entries in here. For the add record, we've gone in and we've put an @ symbol, which is for root, and the IP address. Now you can't see the IP address, I've just blanked it out just for the purpose of this video, but this will be your home internet IP address. If you don't know what that is, just punch into Google, what is my IP address? So those are the first two we'll have, and we'll leave it at that for now and click continue. And it's going to tell us that, hey, it's not active on Cloudflare yet. Now the reason is we're currently using the default Google domain name servers. And what it wants us to do is actually put our Cloudflare domain name servers. So pretty easy. So we'll click copy. So I've just split screen that just to make it a bit easier for us to see. So back in Google, because Google is the owner of our domain, this is where we need to make changes. You know, if you're using a different domain provider, you will need to find the DNS settings for that provider. All right, but the rules still apply. So under DNS name servers, we want to use custom name servers. And we've copied this here and we paste it in and click save. Yep, that's fine. It's just going to tell you that, you know what, this is going to take some time if you make any of these sort of changes. All right, no problem. That's fine. We'll change that. Wants us to give at least 2, so press the little plus icon and then we'll copy the other one and click save. Back on Cloudflare, we'll ask it to check. Now it's going to give you a couple of extra options here. So automatic HTTPS rewrites. So basically, if you've got content on there that is actually pulling HTTP traffic, it'll rewrite it for secure HTTPS. We also always want to use HTTPS. I like to do it on the Cloudflare level. If you don't, you can just leave it if your proxy's handling that and it's working fine. But I like to do it on the Cloudflare level, so I'll leave it like that. Minify can also have issues with particular types of content on your site. So I would actually leave it off and then go back and test it if you would like it to be used. Just make sure you always test these changes, guys. We'll click finish. And so now there's not much you can do until the name server is picked up. And that can take some time. As Google said earlier, it can take up to 48 hours. Now, usually it doesn't. It might take usually about half an hour at the latest, but they like to say, you know, even here, 24 hours to process it. So we'll just leave it for there for now until we get to the next step. And with the magic of editing, it will be seamless for you. Okay, guys, just coming back now. So it was literally only about a couple of minutes. And we've got an email from Cloudflare saying, congratulations, it's now activated. So it's picked up the DNS changes which is fantastic. So guys, we're back with Cloudflare. So the next step that we want to sort of take care of is our DNS options. Okay, so as you can see here, it's asking us to add an MX record so that we can process email. Now that can be done in a future video, but I'll just show you how to add the MX records for Google. Okay, so these are really important if you're planning to use email functions part of your domain. Okay, so we've got all the MX records in. Now I need to reiterate, guys, that please only use these if you are using Google domains for a start, but also if you're planning to use Gmail to process mail, okay? Because that's what these are. It's saying that your servers for email, your SMTP servers, will be the Gmail ones, which is what we've put here, okay? But if you're using a different service for handling your emails, you will need to change those, or just leave them out for now and come back to it later. So we'll scroll down a little bit further, and you've got your name servers. So that's pulling it from Google Domains, which we set up earlier under DNS. All right, so that's there. If we come down a little further, you've got something called DNSSEC. Now, part of our setup today is making sure that we set up DNSSEC, because it will stop and help prevent against forged DNS answers. So people can intercept DNS traffic and poison the cache and basically sit in between and read what you're accessing, or you know, get in between basically. What this does is say that only a specific cipher key from your DNS to Cloudflare can be used, and it's encrypted along the way. If we click enable, okay guys, so we've got the DNSSEC information here. For obvious reasons, I've blanked out a lot of the information, but on the right hand side in Google, you'll see what the relevant fields are. So key tag, which is over here. Then you've got the algorithm. Algorithm is 13. We've picked 13 in the list. The digest type is type 2 again, 256. And then the digest, which is this one here. Now that's all Google asks for. So once we've hit save on Google there, that should be it. And as you can see, it can take quite a bit of time, up to an hour sometimes. So you just have to be patient, but that part is now pretty much done. So we have DNSSEC enabled on our domain, which is really good for our security. And if we just go over to SSL TLS, so you've got off, flexible, full, and full strict. So as you can see, flexible basically shows that the origin server is unsecured, but everything out is, which is what we discussed earlier. Then you have full end-to-end using a self-signed certificate. So if you're using Let's Encrypt certificates, for example, you would want to set this to full. If you want to be full strict, which is what we want to do, we want to encrypt end-to-end using a trusted Cloudflare Origin certificate on the server, okay? So we're going to tick that to strict. Under here, we've got edge certificates. As you can see, automatically it's created these edge certificates for us, so we don't have to worry about those. If I just go back to our image again, so the edge certificate is this one, and that's being created for us. If we go to client certificates, we don't have to do anything there. Head over to origin certificate. So this is where you want to create your certificate. We'll click create. We'll let Cloudflare create our own key, and we want to list the host names that will be included. Most of the time you want the root domain, which is this one, and a wildcard if you plan to use a lot of subdomains. If you're using only specific ones and you don't want anything else, then specify them here instead and remove the wildcard. As you can see, the validity, we've got up to 15 years you can pick, and a lot less. We're going to leave it for 15 years and click next. So as it says here, we need to copy the contents and save them as a .pem and a .key respectively. Okay, so the first one is our .pem, so that's fine. So we've got Notepad++ open up here. We'll paste that in there, make sure we take in any extra spaces. And underneath here, we'll also do the same thing. So we've got the two there. So now we just want to save it. So make sure we save it in our file that we want. So IBRACORP.org.pem for start. Next one here will be the same, except it's going to be a .key. And if I just bring this over, as you can see, it's saved it as a text. So we're just going to close that there, and we're going to remove the end there because we want it to be a certain format. All right, so we've got our key and we've got our PEM files. Let's head on back to our Cloudflare setup. So thankfully we've got all that. So we'll click OK. And you can see here we've got the Origin certificate and when it expires, which is quite a while away. And that's all set up from the Cloudflare end, guys. That's the first part done. So now we want to, let's say, protect and set up an endpoint from our server. So we've set up our Cloudflare and we've set up Google domains. That's all done. Beautiful. So let's say you're back on your Unraid server and you've just finished setting up a container. In this case, we're using Overseer again as our example. And you know what? We've opened it up. We're happy with it. It's working. I want to expose it out to the web. So let's go back to Cloudflare. And under DNS, we're going to create a new record. And we'll make it a CNAME. I believe that's how Overseer is spelled. Yep. So, and the target address will just be IBRACORP.org and hit save. So we've got our first CNAME there set up. All right. So now we'll go back to NGINX Proxy Manager. Before we add a proxy host, we're going to go and add those certificates that we've just got from Cloudflare. So under SSL certificates, you can see our existing ones there for Let's Encrypt. We're going to click Add, Custom, Name, we'll just call it IBRACORP CDN. So here's our key and PEM file. So we want the key one first. And we want the PEM for our certificate. We don't need an intermediate one. And we'll click Save. And there you go. So now the certificate lives on our Origin server. And it expires on the 24th of January 2036. Fantastic. Wasn't that hard, right? Now we can go back to proxy hosts. Now again, if you haven't seen my NGINX proxy video, I suggest go watching that because I'm only going to breeze through this now, assuming that you already sort of understand this and save everybody a little bit of time. We will cache assets, block exploits, and will provide WebSocket support. Head over to SSL, and under here, you'll now see our loaded SSL certificate. Now the benefit of this is it'll cover anything basically because we've allowed a wildcard on the certificate when we created it in Cloudflare. So we can use it for all of our subdomains as long as they are the same subdomain as the certificate. So we'll click Force. We don't have HSTS enabled yet. If we come back to Cloudflare, so under Cloudflare, under SSL Edge certificates, you can see HSTS is currently not on. I'm not going to cover it in this video just because it can throw things offline. I do actually use it though, so I would recommend enabling it and making sure you read through the instructions. It's not hard to do, you don't have to configure much. But if you are not using it, do not enable it here. If you are using it, make sure you enable it here. Simple as that. Click Save. And so we have a domain come up now, our proxy. We'll click the link. And welcome. You've now set up a fully encrypted domain end-to-end from your Origin to Cloudflare and from Cloudflare out to the rest of the world. And it hasn't cost you a single cent apart from buying the domain, of course. Now, in my case, it was $18 Australian. In your case, you might pick up a domain for just a couple of dollars. Okay, so you know, it really depends what you're looking for and where you're purchasing it. And back on Cloudflare here, you know, once you give it a little bit of time to start getting things going and you start getting traffic, the analytics are great. You can really get a nice little view of everything that's happening, any threats that have been mitigated. In fact, I will actually swap over to my live account just to show you what that looks like. So this is potentially what it could look like once you've started to get some requests going through to your domain. It gives you quite a bit of information on, you know, threats and any sort of thing that might be impacting your site, how many SSL certificates are handed out, etc., which is pretty cool. That's pretty much it, guys. It wasn't, you know, it doesn't take long. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit to get your head around it, but the process involved is actually pretty short. It took me about a year and a half to realize how exposed I was before I started implementing these sort of Cloudflare protections, and it's been great ever since. I really highly recommend it. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps me out, guys. I really appreciate it. And make sure you leave a comment. You know, I always respond to comments, any sort of feedback. Only a fool thinks they know everything. A wise man knows nothing. So, you know, I'm always willing to learn something off you too if you have something to share, and with the rest of the community. So thanks for your time. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you in the next IBRACORP video.